Okay, so Dandavat to everybody. So our topic suggested by Chinmoy Prabhu today was saranagati, the meaning of saranagati. That's right. So this is very, very important topic. This is the very essence. This is the juice. Oh, and now we have Ananda Mai from Portugal. She's also tuned in. Welcome.
Dhanavad Didi. I had to take a shower because I was afraid you could smell me. Dhanavad Didi, Shachidifi.
We have Saji here as well. So Sharanagati, this is the very essence. Srila Sridhar Maharshi describes it as the foundation of our spiritual practice. He gives the analogy of we have so many practices of devotion, and in particular, we have these 9 practices which have come from Prahlad Maharaj. Oh, now we have Govinda Nandini from Brazil, also here. Dhanyavad. We have these 9 practices which have come from Prahlad Maharaj in Srimad Bhagavatam. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Pada Sevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atmani Vedanam, hearing and chanting, remembering, worshipping, praying, serving the Lord as a servant, serving the Lord as a friend, and finally Atmani Vedanam, which means self-giving. So this Atmani Vedanam, or Sharanagati, surrender, self-giving, this is the very life essence of all of these practices of devotion. And so Srila Sridhar Maharshi gives a very helpful example that if you have a stage upon which there's some drama being enacted, then he said we can compare Sharanagati or Atmani Vedanam, self-giving, to the platform, to the stage. And then all these practices are being performed on top of that stage. And so if you remove the stage, then everything collapses. Everything falls in. Then there's nothing there. So it is very, very fundamental. And we're very fortunate coming to this line of Srila Sridhar Maharaj and Srila Govinda Maharaj, where this is something that has been especially emphasized, that it is not so much what we are doing, but it is more about the consciousness behind which that is being offered and performed. This is bringing us to a more mature and developed understanding of what the practice of bhakti is about. And in a very, one thing which I've been contemplating for some time is that we see that that bhakti, it's gaining some popularity within the world, especially in places like California. But one point which kind of differentiates, we could say, like the men from the boys, or from the more immature to the more mature and more developed practitioners, is that those who have a less developed understanding, bhakti is something that is that gives us pleasure, that gives us enjoyment. And if you think about all these practices of devotion, they're all it's a wonderful way to live your life. Sadhu sangha, spending time with wonderful people, beautiful people, realized people, intelligent people, kirtan, chanting and dancing, eating nice prasadam, nice food. All of these practices, they're very just a very happy way to live your life, you know. But what happens with what we see with many of those who are, you know, promoting or subscribing to some degree or another to the path of bhakti, is that it's more about bringing that idea into the arena of providing pleasure for our own selves. Whereas a more advanced understanding, you know, we're singing these wonderful songs, we're eating this wonderful food, and we're mixing with wonderful people, but it's more about, in an individual sense, providing satisfaction for ourselves. And you know, that's a happy thing. That's one level of understanding. But a more mature understanding is that everything that we're doing, it is an offering. It's not something that we're directly doing because it's pleasurable to ourselves, but we're doing it as an offering to the Lord, to the Vaishnavas, and not that we are, you know, denying happiness for ourselves, but there's a deeper type of happiness that comes from that. You know, nowadays this concept of self-love is gaining some popularity. But in one place, Srila Sridhar Maharaj points out that the highest type of self-love is to offer love to the Lord, because whatever love we offer to the center, to Krishna, that will come back to us a million times over. So there is a far greater degree of satisfaction to be found in that act of offering. Of course, the challenge is that in the beginning, there's going to be some friction, because we have acquired so many layers of false prejudice. We have acquired so much misunderstanding, misconception, and we have so many gross and subtle layers of selfishness, you know, within ourselves. And so there will necessarily be some friction when we try to make that shift from doing things for ourselves to making everything that we're doing an offering, and not just in an external sense, but in a conscious sense. Not just that we are offering things or actions or paraphernalia, but that we're trying to offer our ego, we're trying to offer our very self, we're trying to offer our heart, you know. Then necessarily there will be some friction, there will be some tension, there will be resistance within ourselves. So there's this famous conversation in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the Ramananda Samvad, this conversation that takes place between Mahaprabhu and Ramananda Rai, and it's a very wonderful conversation to study, because within that conversation, the whole ontology of theistic thought is presented in a very systematic and clear way. And so the seconds, so, you know, Mahaprabhu is like presenting a conception, and then, Ramananda is presenting a conception at the request of Mahaprabhu, and then Mahaprabhu is rejecting it and saying, tell me something deeper, tell me something more. And so the second level that Ramananda reaches is Krishna Karmarpan, which means to offer our actions to the Lord. So this is a this is a step up from just practicing bhakti in a very self-centered way. You know, that whatever we are doing, we will offer it to Krishna. So Krishna Karmarpan means to offer our activity to Krishna. And there's a verse that's quoted from Bhagavad Gita to substantiate that. Yat karoshi Yadashnashi, Yajduhoshi, Dadasi, Yatapasya Sikunteya, Tat Purushra, Madarpanam. Whatever you're doing, whatever you're eating, whatever you're offering, whatever charity you're performing, whatever it may be, make it an offering unto me. So this is a famous verse of Bhagavad Gita, celebrated verse of Bhagavad Gita, and it's very helpful. And it can be understood in different ways, with different slants of interpretation. But in the context of this Ramananda Samvad, Mahaprabhu rejects it. Because there's the implication in this verse that simply whatever you're doing, you're offering it. And so there's something lacking in terms of a conscious exchange. It's something that's springing from our own egoistic self. It's coming from our own egoistic identity. It's springing from there, whatever it may be, and then we're offering that. So because of the way because the verse can be interpreted in that way, then Mahaprabhu rejects it. It's like just as a very crude example, I like pizza, and so I'm going to offer pizza to Krishna. Just as a very simple example, this is what I like, and so I'm going to offer it to Krishna. So this is one level of devotion, and it's it's beautiful. And as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, he lists, there's that famous verse where he lists different types of persons who approach him, and he says they're all dear to me. It's mentioned there are 4 types of people Krishna lists. Arto, Artatika, Jigyasa, Jnani. Persons who are seeking some wealth, some economic gain. Persons who are suffering and looking for some relief. And persons who are simply curious. And then 4thly, persons who are self-realized and are truly seeking spiritual knowledge. So these are the 4 levels of different types of approaches. And Krishna mentions there that the self-realized, they have the purest approach. But he also says all of them are dear to me. All of these persons are dear to me. So anyone who's approaching the Lord in any way whatsoever, that is something glorious, and that is something to be appreciated and celebrated. However, we are coming in the line of Srila Bhakti-Rakshak Sridhar Goswami Maharaj, we are always appreciating a gradation. And that is also very prominent in this conversation in Chaitanya Charitamrita, the Ramananda Samvad. So that's one level. Or like let's take the example of the child, who makes a mud pie and offers it. Govind's Nandini, she has a little daughter, Nandini, and when I was last there, she would make these little concoctions for me in Brazil. Like, she would grate up some vegetables, and her fingers aren't so clean, and so she's making that with her heart, and she's coming and giving it, so that's something very sweet and something to be appreciated, right? But at a more mature level, if someone wants to make an offering, they will consider, now what does this person actually like, and what would be the best way to give it to them in such a way that they would actually eat it and not just politely accept it and then put it in the bushes somewhere. So in this conversation, it's a very developed conversation. I'm still trying to understand it myself. I'm just highlighting a few significant points which are especially relevant in this conversation. So then there's another, then the verse that oh, Chaitanya Mai is here. So good to see you. And Maheshri has also joined us. So then the verse there's about 5 different levels of thought which Mahaprabhu which Ramananda proposes, and then Mahaprabhu rejects. Is age kahar. This is external. Please go deeper. So then the point at which Mahaprabhu says, this is okay. Eho hoy, age kahar. This is okay. Now go further. Then so this verse is very important for everyone, because it, on the path of bhakti, because it establishes what is the foundation of pure devotion, Shuddha bhakti. And that's kind of the point I'm making here. There's different types of bhakti, but what we're interested in is Shuddha bhakti, pure devotion, which essentially means that it is fully in the interest of whom it is being offered to, the Lord, free from any type of vested interest. So that verse, which Mahaprabhu accepts as the beginning, as establishing the foundation of pure devotion, is Gyane Prayasha Mudapasha Namante Eva Jivanti Sanmukaritam Bhavadiya Bhartam Sane Sito Shrutikatam Tanuvanyo Vivye Prayaso Jitadito Vyasi Taistri. So it starts out with this Gyane Prayasham Udapasya, means, and this can be understood in different ways. Oh great, Chinmoy Prabhu has put the verse up for us. Thank you very much. That one way, for the purposes of this discussion, we can understand it in this way, and this is also how Gurudev has explained it, that whatever mundane ideas we've accumulated from this world, to throw that away, to leave yourself empty of your concocted and misconceived ideas, upon everything that you're projecting upon your understanding of the absolute, of the Lord. To leave that aside, not just leave it aside, but throw it away. So everything, because all these ideas that we've collected, they're like, they create these, like a type of distorted filter, like distorted filters, which hamper and limit our clear understanding and clear vision of divinity, of the Lord, of Guru, of Vaishnava, of the Siddhanta, of the conception, all of these things. So this is the first step. First to set all of that aside, what you've collected, what you've understood, what you've collected from the world of misunderstanding. And then the verse continues to hear, and not only to hear, but to surrender, not just a passive hearing, but in a surrendered mood, to hear from the mouths of the sadhus, of the devotees. Gyane Prayasha Mudapasha Namanta Eva Jivanti Sanmukaritam. Sanmukaritam means what comes from the mouths of the great souls, of the sadhus. So to hear their version. This is one way in which Bhagavat Dharma has been defined, following God's own version of religion. Dharma religion, that is God's like personal, rendering of it. There's a verse in Bhagavatam, Ye vai Bhagavata Prokta Paya Atmalabde Anjapun Sam Vidushan. Can't remember now, but saying like this, that what is Bhagavat Dharma? You should know Bhagavat Dharma to be the means, the means which have been given by the Lord himself, by which persons, even the most ignorant, can reach him. And our Gurudev, he would paraphrase that as meaning, if Krishna says he wants a samosa, then you give him a samosa. This is our religion. It's as simple as that. So one thing that's really interesting in this Ramananda Samvad is you see that the real point from which pure devotion begins is when you're receiving the version of the absolute truth in a very pure form as it's descending from above. Free, all of the previous stages of realization which are described, they're based upon a distorted vision of that higher plane, you know, mixed with our finite, limited understanding. And this is what distinguishes Krishna consciousness from other paths. That it's not taking the approach of religion from the perspective of us as people in this world, but it is simply like a plain, frank presentation of what it really is. You know, like Hegel's statement, he is by himself and he is for himself. That is the nature of the absolute. He does not exist relative to our finite identities and existences within this world. You know, like if we take, just as like a kind of exaggerated example, if we take the Christian conception, you know, God the Father, you know, we are members of this world, and God is someone who's supplying the things that we need in this world. You know, we're seeing God as being valuable relative to our existence within this world. You know, we were mentioning the other day that the word Lord in English, its origin is from German, and it's loaf, the word for loaf, like a loaf of bread. So the very idea of God is intrinsically connected with the idea that God is the person who gives us what we need. You know, we're good children of God, and he's giving us what we need. You know, we're in the center. One way that Srila Maharaj presents it, you know, is that we are in the center, and we're relegating God to the circumference of things, and we're in the center enjoying, we're in the limelight, and God is on the circumference supplying to us. So this is like the Christian conception. And it's also like in general Hindu ideas that conception is also pervasive. So the difference here is that there's a dramatic shift in perspective. No, we are no longer in the center. No, Krishna is in the center. Krishna is the one who's enjoying. Krishna is the one having a good time. And we're the ones on the circumference, you know, trying to supply something to him. So we're trying, you know, what we're being given in Srimad Bhagavatam, what is presented in the teachings of Krishna consciousness is God as he is, not God as we think him to be, or as we want him to be, or God as he fits into our finite little experience in this world, but simply God as he is, existing independently of our whims and understanding and so on and so forth. So saranagati is about trying to align ourselves. It's not that God is coming to serve us, that I'm serving God because he's going to, you know, help me in some way, but I'm simply serving him because that's the highest thing I could do. That's my intrinsic nature. And so I'm trying to understand, how can I please him? What can I do to please him? Not that I'm expecting him to please me in some way. So this is like the foundation of pure devotion. And this is mentioned very clearly in the third verse of Srimad Bhagavatam. You know, Vishakha Devi is clearly distinguishing like what is different in this presentation of Bhagavatam from all the other texts which I've previously given. Dharma prodita kaitavocha paramo nirmatsanam satam. You know, that this Bhagavatam, it is free from any type of cheating religion. And by cheating, he means religion which is mixed with our selfish ideals, with our selfish aspirations. So this Bhagavatam is free from any of this type of kaitava dharma. cheating religion. And who will be able to appreciate it? Those who are near matsar, means those who are free from envy. This is our fundamental disease in this world. It's embarrassing. It's really embarrassing to see how envious we can be sometimes. Sometimes it's like subconsciously there in the background, and sometimes it comes up in like a glaring way. There's this whether it's more subtle or more gross within us, we have this little knot inside of us, that wants to be in the center, that wants to be number one, you see it, like if you look at like modern advertising, this idea is very pervasive, MasterCard, and all these expressions, you're number one, don't forget about number one, all these ideas. But see, the problem is then with that idea is we can't all be number one. So somehow they haven't figured this little hitch out yet. They're still continuing with this propaganda. And we're still subscribing to it, whether in a subtle or in a gross way. It does, just in a practical sense, just if we're being purely practical, and we're eliminating all the scriptural teachings, we don't even go to look at that, we just consider this in a practical way. It doesn't make sense, it's not gonna work, how can we all be number one? And that's why we have friction in the world, that's why we have clashing and so much fighting going on, because everybody wants to be number one. And so it's, individual against individual, it's nation against nation, it's society against society, because everybody's the best, everybody's number one, and everybody's trying to assert their superiority over the superiority of others. So inevitably, and then for some time, one will be able to assert some level of superiority of the other, but it lasts some time and then it changes again, and this is just going on and on in this world. So it doesn't work. The system doesn't work. So we all have this disease in us, as I said, it's embarrassing, someone's being glorified, and then we're thinking, what about me? Like sometimes I call it the "what about me" disease. Like, hey, okay, they did that, but don't you know what I did? Did you see this thing that I did over here? Or they did it, but they got so much help. I did my thing all by myself. I'm so much better. And so this type of competition, it goes on like in all different spheres in this world, in the sphere of intellect, and in the sphere of religion, in the sphere of beauty, and it comes up in everything, physical capacity, it's an endless thing. So this is what really obstructs us from being able to embrace the notion of a God who exists by himself and for himself. This is Hegel's statement, which Srila Maharaj appreciated very much. By himself, meaning that he is in his own category. Nobody's equal to him, and nobody is superior to him. And he exists for his own satisfaction. He exists for his own pleasure, and everything in existence exists for his pleasure also, including ourselves. So the problem with this is that if we subscribe to that, it means that we are no longer number one. We're no longer in that central position. So it is a very difficult thing for general persons to accept. We are all one expression of Srila Maharaj says that we are all masters ruling over our imaginary kingdoms. in this world. So you know, there's this this fear in us, you know, this fear of surrender, because we're still holding on to that idea that you know, we think that if we give up our own conception for, oh, I remember now what I was going to say. Just Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he gave this very nice, he expressed this very nicely, that the Mayavad idea of impersonalism, the impersonal idea, is that, you know, yes, there is God, and we are all God. So Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he rendered this as no taxation without representation. That we will only admit that there is a God if we are also God. Otherwise, we won't accept. Only if we can be a part of that, you know, then we will admit. Otherwise, no. There's no such thing. We don't believe it. So this is like a deep-rooted issue within us, and as it is pointed out at the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, we can only come to embrace this conception of the personality of Godhead if we are free, if we are able to admit the supremacy of somebody else as being categorically above ourselves. And then extending outwards, being able to recognize the superior qualities of others in general, and especially the Vaishnavas, the devotees. So, you know, if we really want to progress in an authentic way, we have to become free from that envious spirit, that envious nature within us. And then I also wanted to mention that we have this fear of surrender, because there's this fear that if we will, there's a fear we have that our interest is not represented within the absolute interest. So therefore we feel that we are going to miss out. You know, if we surrender our own interests for the sake of the Lord's interest or the interests of the Vaishnavas, then we are going to be neglected in some way. If I, just as a very simple example, you know, there's some ego battle going on, and if I will submit to that person, then I'm going to be losing. You know, I'm going to lose out. So you know, because my interest will no longer be represented. My interest will not be upheld as superior. And then also, you know, in connection with the Lord, you know, there's this fear that if I will surrender for the sake of the Lord's interest, then what will I have? You know, I will have nothing. And Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he also describes this as the origin of fear. You know, this is mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam. Vayam dvitiya viniveshikasya ishada pritasya vipariyo smriti. What's the next? But saying that this very, very interesting verse, that the first line, Vayam dvitiya vinivesh. That by fear arises from, dvitiya means a second. So from perceiving a second interest. This is the origin of fear. No, actually there's only one interest. There's the absolute interest, the Lord's interest. The real fundamental current of this world is moving in accordance with the Lord's interest, with Krishna's interest. But because we're perceiving something else, then as a result, fear arises from that. Because naturally, if we are living in consciousness of the whole, then we're seeing that everything that is coming to us, it is in the interest of the whole. And so there's no reason to be afraid. There's no reason to be apprehensive. comprehensive, because another way he put it, as it is a lack of guardian consciousness. This is the origin of fear, a lack of guardian consciousness, not perceiving that the Lord's interest is the real interest of this world, and it is behind every wave in the environment. There's no random, no chaotic event in this world. Everything is coming by the will of the Absolute. And so when we're living in that consciousness, there's no fear, there's no apprehension, because we're seeing every wave is friendly. Suhridam sarvabhutanam, that he is friendly. What is his nature? He is friendly to all. He is in control. And he is the master of all. He is in control. And he's not a vengeful Lord, but he's a friendly Lord. So everything, and that's this famous verse in Gita that Swami Maharaj, he called the peace formula. So when we're living in that consciousness, there's no need of fear. But when we're living in the consciousness of our individual interest, then we're naturally always fearful and feeling threatened by the environment, because we don't believe that the Lord's interest is the real interest of the world, and we don't believe that our interest is represented in the Lord's interest. Actually, our interest and the Lord's interest is synonymous. And so, but if we're not believing that, then we're always feeling threatened, because we're always living in the consciousness of our own interest. And of course, the interest of so many others, it's not in accordance necessarily with our interest. And so we're always feeling defensive, and we're always feeling threatened, and we're feeling the need to assert ourselves to try to overcome this fear, this apprehension that we have. But when we're living in the consciousness of a guardian, of having a guardian, a loving guardian overhead, then there's no need for apprehension, there's no need for fear. So, these are all very high and lofty and wonderful things. Not that I can pretend to have realized them. But so beautiful and so logical, so clear. This is what we're hearing from our gurus and from the scriptures. So this is the challenge in saranagati. It begins with faith. Faith is the starting point of saranagati, to believe that Shraddha Shabde Vishwas Kade Sudirdan Nishtoy Krishnavati Koilas. That this is a definition of Shraddha that is given in Chaitanya Charitamrita, the firm conviction that by devotion to Krishna, everything can be achieved, everything can be attained. And this is a fundamental element of Sharanagati. I think many of you are in this back to Bhakti Basics class with Madhusudana Maharaj, and I think you already covered this verse in Prapana Jivanamrita, to one of Srila Maharaj's original verses. And Gurudev commented about that verse, that if you can only learn one shloka and put one shloka into your heart and make it this one, Bhagavad Bhakti Ta Sarvam Ityuchi Javiderapi Kainkaryam Krishna Padaka Trayatvam Sharanagati. And three points in particular are mentioned here. It's a definition of Sharanagati at the beginning of Prapana Jivanamrita. For those of you who don't know that book, please read it. It's so wonderful. Gurudev described it as the first book and the last book. So the first point mentioned is the corresponds with the definition of faith, of Shraddha. Bhagavad Bhakti Ta Sarvam. So the conviction that by Bhagavad Bhakti, by devotion to Bhagavan, to the Lord, to Krishna, Sarvam, everything will be attained. And by everything, we understand to mean everything that we could possibly want, whatever desires we have for fulfillment, for joy, and so on and so forth, that will be attained through saranagati. And it's easy to say all these things, but to actually take up the practice is very difficult, because there's yes, it's true, there's that pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, but to get there, there's going to be some trouble, and the main trouble is our own false ego. That's the real spanner in the works, we could say. Yeah, it's funny sometimes, like you can plan the most wonderful thing, and like a couple years ago, I helped to organize one kind of like venture with the devotees, and we had it all planned out really nicely, but then a couple of the people didn't come on. And then we were laughing afterwards, we worked so hard to plan this, and it could have been so good, but we forgot this little detail, and so it just bombed. So in the same way, there are all these wonderful things that are being promised to us, but then our own egos, they get in the way, and they make things very complicated, make things very difficult. It could be something very simple, it could be very beautiful, but then it's like, oh, I'm here. I'm in the way. I forgot that little detail. So Bhagavad Bhakti Tasaram, to have this conviction that whatever desires we have, whatever needs we have, they will be fulfilled. And also, in a more practical sense, whatever duties we may have, if we leave a lower duty in the interest of pursuing our higher duty to Krishna, to have the faith that will be fulfilled, that will be taken care of. So this is the starting point, we can say, in Sharanagati, to have this type of faith, that everything will be attained by this, that the Lord is there, that He will take care of us, we will not be neglected, although it may feel like that at times. And Bhagavad Bhakti Tasaram Ityuchija Viderapi Kainkaryam, and this is not so relevant to us as being the Western stock, but to give up attachment, if necessary, in service to Krishna, to give up, rigid attachments to even scriptural regulations. Because Krishna, the scriptures, they're giving the guidelines. They're, as Srila Sridhar Maharaj expresses in one place, the scriptures, they're pointing in the direction. They're like signposts pointing in the direction. Or just, as an example, like some of our practices that we may carry out as daily sadhana, chanting so many numbers of rounds, and waking up at a certain time, going to bed at a certain time, and doing arati, and all these things, all those things, they don't guarantee that you're going to get the thing. They're things that will support the development of devotion, that will keep us on the path, but they don't equal, bhakti. So all of these things that are given in the scriptures, all these guidelines, they are, and also prohibitions, not doing so many things also doesn't equal devotion. So those things are like guidelines. They're supporting us, but they don't equal devotion. So in the interest of Krishna, we have to be free from too much rigid attachment to such things, and if necessary, to be ready to let them go. We have to understand like the free and living nature of Krishna consciousness, to understand that we're trying to make a living heart connection with the Lord and with the Vaishnavas, and we have to understand in a refined way, how and when to apply so many practices and ideas that are mentioned in different places. We have to develop this refined sense of things. So that's one way that line is understood, that if necessary, we must give up attachment to scriptural regulations. There's one very nice example of that in Srimad Bhagavatam, when Krishna, he's out, many of you know that pastime already, sure. Krishna's out with the cowherd boys, and then they get hungry, and they saw that nearby there was a group of Brahmins who were performing some elaborate fire sacrifices. And so Krishna and Balaram, they tell the cowherd boys, well, why don't you go and ask those Brahmins, because a part of the sacrifices involves having food offerings. So they tell, Krishna and Balaram tell the cowherd boys, go ask those Brahmins if we can have some of that prasada, we're very hungry. And so some of the cowherd boys go over, and the Brahmins, they don't even answer. Who are these, scruffy cowherd boys? We're doing very important, yajna here. We're not going to pay them any attention. So, they're doing all these, elaborate offerings to Vishnu in a ritualistic way. And meanwhile, Krishna's right in front of them saying, Krishna, the Supreme Lord, is there in front of them saying, I'm hungry, can I have some food? But they're so busy with their ritualistic practices that they're not able to recognize what this is. And so the cowherd boys, they return to Krishna. Oh, Krishna, they wouldn't give us anything. And Krishna says, oh, go to their wives. And so they go to the wives of the Brahmins. And for them, this is what they've been waiting for. Some of them, they haven't met Krishna. They've just heard about him, and they've already fallen in love with him just through hearing about him. And so for them, this is the opportunity of a lifetime. Oh, wow, we can directly give something to Krishna. And so they bring their offerings. And later, those Brahmins, they realize the mistake that they made. And there's one verse, which is also in Prabhupada Namrita. Can you pass me a copy of Prabhupada Namrita? And there's a verse in Prabhupada Namrita from Bhagavatam where these Brahmins are saying, to hell with our sacrificial rituals, and to hell with our Brahmin bread, and to hell with this, all our learning. The Supreme Lord himself, you came before us, so we could not recognize him. So this is just one example. And in a very practical way, this idea can play out within our daily service life and interactions with the devotees. We can be attached to a kind of rigid idea of how things are supposed to be. And in doing so, we're neglecting the more living and immediate nature of the thing. So that is one point. The second point mentioned in this verse of Srimad Sridhar, what is surrender? It is not bound by any type of rules or law or regulation. It is connected with the heart of the Lord, and it's something living and natural. But then another way that Gurudev interpreted this line is that even if we cannot follow the regulations of the scriptures, we will not be disqualified from saranagati. So this is very encouraging. And this is something that and that's more of the problem that many of us have. Not that we're too attached to the rules, but that we're too neglectful. It's too difficult for us to follow all the rules. So it was very encouraging for us. And we're very fortunate because we saw in a very living way our Gurudev, how magnanimous and how tolerant he was, and how affectionate he was. And he would never disqualify or dismiss somebody on the basis of not being able to follow some of the regulative principles. Of course, it was something that he, liked everybody to try to follow. But if somebody couldn't, he did not reject them. And to the point that some people criticized our Gurudev for that. They were envious of how merciful he was. And one of our devotees, he noted how, I won't mention the name, but he came from a different background in Krishna consciousness. And when he first came to our mat, it was very difficult for him to adjust, to seeing how magnanimous Gurudev was in this regard. But one striking thing that he noticed was that Gurudev, he was more tolerant of these things in regards to proper practice. But when it came to a lack of appreciation for the Gurudev was utterly intolerant of that. He could not tolerate that at all. He would say, like Shri Vishakha told me, he came to Gurudev once and said, "Oh Gurudev, can I tell you something?" And Gurudev said, "You can tell me what you like, as long as you're not going to criticize another Vaishnava." It was so important to Gurudev to not to avoid this critical tendency. And this one devotee told me how he'd observed, and he was like trying to get his head around like how tolerant Gurudev was about certain devotees. And then he traveled with Gurudev to Jagannath Puri, and there was one incident when somebody came to Gurudev to complain about another devotee, and he said Gurudev became like a lion, like he shouted with this like roar. He was so upset that this criticism, which must have been coming from an envious place, otherwise Gurudev wouldn't have reacted so heavily. So Gurudev was so tolerant, he was lenient about persons who weren't able to follow certain practices. But when it came to criticizing another Vaishnava, he was utterly intolerant. And he could not stand that at all. This developing appreciation for the Vaishnavas, this is very, very essential to our development. We can avoid one point Gurudev has made is that we can avoid making offenses by not being envious, but at the same time we can actually make progress by increasing our appreciation of the devotees. Krishna consciousness is all a heart-to-heart transaction. So what wealth we see in the hearts of the devotees, to be able to overlook what faults they have and to appreciate the qualities they have, and to express, to offer our appreciation for that, that's inviting those qualities to us. We will become enhanced by those qualities ourselves. So Krishna consciousness is really a culture of appreciation, properly situated appreciation for the Lord, and by extension, the devotees of the Lord. The more that our capacity to appreciate increases, the more our Krishna consciousness increases. So then the third point in this verse, Bhagavad Bhakti Tasaram Ityuchita Vidervi Kainkaryam Krishna Padaka, and to take exclusive Krishna Padaka, to take exclusive shelter of Krishna in every time, place, and circumstance. Not to take shelter of our minds, not to take shelter of various conceptions that have been collected from this world, or to take shelter of other finite persons within this world, but to take shelter of the Lord and the Vaishnavas. This is the third point of Sharanagati. And so here I have this wonderful book, Papana Namrita, really, really beautiful book. And this has been compiled by our Param Gurudev Srila Sridhar Maharaj. And it's a treatise on Sharanagati. Prapana is referring to a surrendered soul. So this is the book, the name of the book, Prapana Jivanamrita, the Amrita nectar, Jiva, life. So what is the nectar in the lives of the Prapana, of the surrendered souls? And then in the scriptures, there are 6 limbs of Sharanagati which are described. And in this Anukulyasya Sankalpa, acceptance of the favorable, Pratikulya Vivarjana, rejection of the unfavorable, Rakshishati Vishvasa, to have confidence in the Lord's protection, Anukulyasya Sankalpa, Pratikulya Vivarjana, Rakshishati Vishvasa. What else? What am I missing? Doinya, humility is there. Embracing the Lord's guardianship. What is the Sanskrit for embracing the Lord's guardianship? I forgot. Anukulyasya Sankalpa, Pratikulya Vivarjana, Gopchiche. Embracing the Lord's guardianship, accepting the Lord as one's caretaker, guardian, and Atma Nivedanam, or Atma Niksheta, as it is put here, full self-surrender. So this is all covered in this book. In Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he's collected so many verses from the scriptures, which are illuminating these 6 limbs of surrender. And Srila Sridhar Maharaj also has his own unique illuminations of every verse that he cites. A very, very special book, both in a scholarly sense as well as in a devotional, terms of devotional content, in terms of poetry and scholarship on all sides. It is an incredible book. And it was originally composed in Sanskrit, early Sanskrit. So yeah, if anybody hasn't studied this book before, then I highly recommend it. And then we also have Bhakti Vinod Thakur's Sharanagati, which is also through songs, through Bhakti Vinod Thakur's songs, original songs, is also illuminating 6 limbs of surrender. Okay, well, yeah, I mean, if I just in a very, very, like the main point I wanted to make is that, which is like the starting point of beginning the practice of pure devotion, is that not that he is for me, but I am for him. So this is the essence of Sharanagati. Everything that we're doing is in the interest of the Lord and the Vaishnavas. And when we begin to take up this practice, then we will be tested in so many ways. We'll be tested in so many ways. How much is what you are doing really in the interest of the Lord and the other Vaishnavas? And how much is what you're doing in the interest of your own ego? We will be, when we're consciously trying to practice this, then it will, there will be so many situations that will come up that will give us the opportunity to clarify within ourselves, for whom am I doing this? Who is the beneficiary of this? And in that mood of approach, then we'll face situations where we may have to make decisions that will bring us down in terms of our sense of ego, in the interest of fulfilling the Lord's interest and the interest of the devotees. We may have to put ourselves in a lower position, in a humble position. So these types of tests, they will come up. And then the tests, they'll get harder and harder. it is all wonderful. Maybe I'll stop there. I don't want to talk too long, but it's so wonderful to be here and discuss all these things with all of you. I've been speaking mostly in a broad sense, but you know, in Prophet Namrita Saranagati, then there's more specific discussion of these different elements, different aspects of surrender. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, we could, you know, we could go through that in other classes.
Thank you, Didi, so much. If anybody has any questions, please feel free. And also, I would just like, just at the end here, if anybody who has the video off, maybe that'd be wonderful if we could just turn the video on for a few minutes so we could see everybody, if possible.
Asking everyone to turn on their video. David T, so nice you could join us. Welcome.
A little bit late, but yes, I wanted to at least get a little bit of your beautiful talk. Thank you.
And Doya Moy joined us as well. Very nice to see your bright face.
I was working, but I was listening.
Okay.
So also we may want to discuss like the topic for next week, if anybody has any idea what they would like to hear or some kind of question for Vishakha, who's expert at giving the perfect answers. So please feel free to speak up.
If I may?
Yes, yes.
I actually would like to ask Vishakha, I was looking for the verse where, I don't know if it's in Upadesha Amrita, where is explained the position and the duties of a disciple, and also of the guru, the shishya and the shiksha. No, so I don't know if I'm saying right. But
You're thinking of Bhagavad Gita. I think you're thinking of that verse in Bhagavad Gita.
That verse in the Bhagavad Gita says that the disciple should ask, you know, proper questions, but it doesn't go deeper. Isn't it?
So you're talking of something else, huh?
I thought there was another scripture where explains, you know, all the qualities of a good devotee, and also the qualities of the guru.
I'll think about it. I mean, what comes to mind is that famous verse in Bhagavad Gita.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, of course, you know that verse.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe Chinmoy Prabhu, he's also very good with verses. And Govinda Nandini is also very good with verses.
Local experts.
Yeah, I'll look for something like that because I know it's in one of our books. Maybe it's something to do with the 3 ways we approach a spiritual master, and I can't remember the word, Prapashna or something like that.
No, that's the Bhagavad Gita. Tadvidi pranipatena paripashena devaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshina. Pranipatena means surrender, paripashnena, sincere, relevant inquiry, and sevaya, service. They're the qualities of the disciple. And then of the guru, that they are tattva darshina, that they are having like actual living experience of that higher plane. And they are jnaninas. They are also knowledgeable in the scripture and the conception. So that's a very famous verse, but Chaitanya was saying there's another one.
Maybe I'm mistaken. I thought I was trying to look in another books, but I didn't find it. So maybe
you're, I mean, Upadesh Shamrita, there's a verse describing 6 favorable qualities for the practice of
yeah. No, it's not that one.
It's not that one either.
No.
Okay, well, we'll all try and think about it.
See, yes, this one. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-mm. Okay, thank you. If anybody finds somewhere else.
It's also the book, I don't know if Gurudev went on in giving this book with initiation. It has very You don't have it?
Yes, yes.
It describes very well what are the duties of the devotees.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. I hope it can help.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, should we stop there then?
If no one wants to ask something else or give up maybe a topic for next week.
Il topic potrebbe essere proprio quello del
But it's always very nice to see all the devotees. I'm so very
Yeah,
happy.
really nice. Really.
I mean, we are big family all over the world, all connected here.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Vishakha Devi Dasi ki
Wow.
Devotees ki jai. Chinmoy Prabhu ki jai. Rachel.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bye, Dhanavad.
Jai
Thank you.
Shri Gurudev. Jai Shri Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj.
Jai.
Yeah.